Namaskaram. So now let's talk about 8th chapter of the book Karma. Topic of the 8th chapter is Karma Yoga and the mental body. Let's talk about Sutra first. If you experience this moment just once, you will never be able to fall out of it. First point is plunging into the present. In the modern world, ruled by the intellect, the mind is far more dominant than ever before. The body is no longer the most powerful presence in our lives. In an age of virtual reality where lives can be lived out almost entirely in cyberspace, people are sometimes barely aware that they own a body. However, if we are able to use our mind to make a shift in our perspectives, we can make a paradigm shift, one that can create a right ambience for the deeper journey towards liberation. This is not an invitation to a new philosophy. As a guru, I am not interested in offering spiritual advice. There is nothing new to add to the barrage of spiritual teaching to which we are here. What I offer is a way, a living process. This is best transmitted during a live program in a controlled atmosphere. But even in a book, a significant shift can occur if the reader is willing and in the right state of openness. What follows is an invitation to a living wisdom, an invitation to shed vast volume of karmic baggage so we can become receptive to grace. Now human beings, as we all know, experience time as three different dimensions: past, present and future. Our lives and our languages are structured around this. But let's look at this afresh. In actual fact, all that you can call your past exists only as memory. Do you see this? All the life events that have shaped you, all the work you have ever done, all the money in your bank balances, all the vacations you have been on, all the conversation and argument you have had, all the relationship of love and hatred and indifference, all the friendship and enmities you have nurtured, all the books you have read and movies you have seen, all the scriptures you have read, all these existed only in your memory. Similarly, all that you call future exists only as imagination. All that you long for and dread, your dream house, your perfect mate, your baby, your promotion, your pay hike, your beach home, the accolades you believe you deserve, all the horrific illness you could contract, all the terrible accident that could befall all those you love, all the gruesome way in which you could lose your money, your property, your family, your life, all the apocalyptic way in which this planet could meet its end, all this exists only in your imagination. And so these are the only two things that you are suffering right now: your memory and your imagination. Nothing more. Both memory and imagination exist only in your mind. They are aspect of your psychological reality. They have nothing to do with the existential reality. Stop for a moment and ask yourself, when I am not lost in these mental constructs of memory or imagination, where am I? There can be only one answer to that: the present. The present is not a creed, a matter of faith. It is a reality. You do not have to try to be in the moment. The present isn't an idea. And the fact is, you do not have to try to be in it. You are in the moment. There is nowhere else to be. Existentially, this is the only truth. It is just that you are not available to it. Does this mean that you should abandon your memory and imagination? Certainly not. In any case, we do not wish to destroy karma because it is the glue that makes our physical and psychological reality possible. However, we do wish to transcend it when we choose. This means seeing one simple fact: your individuality is entirely made up. It is your creation. Your karma enables you to gather a certain amount of life. What you call myself is simply the name you give to the volume of life that you have captured. But if we wipe out all psychological imprints, you as a person will not exist. You will exist as a pure life. Existentially, you are life in its essence. In that essential unmanifest state, you are completely devoid of time and you are completely devoid of karma. You are deathless, indestructible, eternal. So, what is left when the myth of individuality is shattered? You simply reach to the end of cyclical time. This moment contains an infinite number of possibilities. You can destroy your entire psychological structure and create a new one at this very moment, or you can stop creating entirely and exist as pure, formless life. This means you have chosen freedom over form, timelessness over temporality, the present moment over cyclical time. Think about it. Your understanding of time is essentially cyclical. The planet spins once, you call it a day. The moon revolves around the planet, you say it a month. The planet goes around the sun, you proclaim that is a year. Everything that is physical is cyclical. In the East, the world of cycle is called samsara. When we talk of transcending karma, we are essentially thinking of how to transcend the cycles of samsara. Once you break the cycle, there is no you and me anymore. For individuality exists only in the time and space. Once we cross the boundaries of time and space, of memory and imagination, there is no us and them. There is no here and there. There is no yesterday and tomorrow. There is only this moment, and this moment is eternity. My cell phone has a mind of its own. I organizes my schedules. It anticipates my next word. It is not so different from my body, except that my body is a more sophisticated technology than my phone. I acquired my phone years ago. I acquired my body over 6 decades ago. I am separate from both of them. The tragedy is that we have become so identified with our body and our cell phone that we believe life without them is death. People all over the world look at the entire cosmos on their cell phones, but at the end of the day, all they have been looking at is their phone screens. Similarly, because you acquired a body and mind, you imagining you are going all over the place. But at the end of your life, you realize that you have just been looking at your projection, the phone screen of your mind. It is like being rudely jolted into reality after a movie. When the lights come on, you have not moved an inch. You have just been going round and round in exactly the same spot. The mind can create a cosmos of its own, but everything in its projection of your own making. You have begun to believe that each projection is a creation in its own right. It's not. You have a sense of time and space only because you are looking at everything through the prism of your accumulated karma. But if you go beyond your thought, your emotion and your body and experience this moment just once, you will never be able to fall out of it. This physical reality that you know is way below 1% of the universe. Even the planet is not forever. It is an inconsequential ball of mud in the larger scheme of things. You are a super minuscule speck on that. You forget that and pretended that you can create an entire universe based on the little data you have gathered. You then see yourself as an individual in opposition to the world. You see the larger universe as trying to crush your world, but it is only trying to crush something that does not exist. Creation is simply reminding you that you are taking the virtual to be real. It is the magnanimity of creation that allows you an experience of individuality, even though you actually have nothing that you can call your own. Of course, you can have fun with the game of individuality and the dance of duality. I do not want to discredit your lived experience in any way, but I do not want to remind you that it is a game and one created by you. Go ahead and enjoy the ride if it appeals to you. Just do not take it too seriously, that's all. Next point is, this moment is inevitable. How does all this lead to a paradigm shift? Here's how. As we have seen, this moment is all there is. Accepting this is not a formula. It is not a theory. It means seeing reality just the way it is. It means aligning yourself with the way things are, not the way you thinking they should be. Once you accept that, This moment is all there is. You see that this moment is inevitable. It cannot be any other way. Do not try to make knowledge out of it. Do not philosophize. Do not say, yes, all moments are inevitable. That is not what I am saying. All moments are not inevitable. Only this moment is inevitable. Do you see the difference? The inevitability of this moment is the only stable aspect of time, the fulcrum upon which the entire physical creation rests. If you are conscious, there is only one place in which you can be: now. Stay with moment to moment awareness. Now answer this simple question: is the next moment is inevitable? No. If you are consciously in this moment, you will see that only this moment is inevitable. The next moment, it is a million possibility. If you are aware, you become a positive, dynamic acceptance of this moment. Happiness that one strives for is a natural ambience that you will live in. There is no other way to be, because happiness is not an occasion, a goal, a destination. Happiness is just your constant state of existence, and this is the end of suffering. This moment is therefore the only doorway both to creation and to the very source of creation. The rest is just hallucination. Your ideas of past and future are entirely delusional. If you consciously accept this moment just the way it is, you arrive at a certain ease within yourself. Ease is a consequence of the relaxation of all you have created. You can in turn experience the whole of existence as yourself. Everything becomes a part of you, as creation in its very nature exists as one whole. Knowing this experience is yoga, or the ultimate union. Most people do not know how to be at ease. Restlessness rules their lives. They are always trying to get somewhere else, but the fact is you cannot go anywhere else. In your mind you can go to million places. You can live in a perennial sense of elsewhereness if you choose, but the moment you are aware, you are in the present. Wherever you go, whatever you do, you can be only in this moment. Do what you want, you can be only in this moment. You can think about yesterday, you can think about tomorrow, you can think a million years ahead, but you are still doing it only in this moment. Does this mean you must never make plans, never remains about the past? Not at all. There is nothing wrong with using the faculties of memory and imagination. They are essential for our survival. We learn from our history, and we certainly need to plan for our future. But there is a difference between using the mind and being used by it. It is time to stop being ruled by a hallucination, to stop being tyrannized by a dream. Now, once you accept something, you own it. Whatever you accept becomes a part of you. Whatever you do not accept stands apart like a huge hurdle. When I was in university, there was a classmate of mine who joined India's National Cadet Corps. He was told that the paramilitary training would offer him good exercise and good food. After a few months, he was taken to a mock army camp where he was given sentry duty. This required him to carry a heavy Lee Enfield 303 rifle while walking up and down near the gate for 6 hours a day. He was a skinny boy and he simply could not carry the rifle. He felt like this arm was coming loose. He complained to his commandant, "Sir, I cannot carry this rifle, it is too heavy for me. Give me some other responsibility. I cannot do this sentry duty." The commandant simply stared at him. The boy scaled down. "Or let me use a stick instead of this rifle," the boy pleaded. "The rifle is too heavy and it does not even have a trigger. In any case, no enemy is really going to attack. Let me use a stick instead." The commandant said nothing. "Sir, please," the boy implored him. The commandant reached out and caught hold of him by his shirt. "You see this? This is a uniform. Once you are in this uniform, you are a soldier. Why are you carrying a rifle? It is a part of you." This statement had a profound impact on the boy. After 6 hours, even the strongest boy in the camp wanted to throw down their rifles, but this boy suddenly had no problem. He simply could not put it down. It had become a part of him. Whenever pain enters your life, you tend to wonder, why me? Even my mother in law did not get it. Of all the people in the world, why me? But once you accept something, it becomes a part of you. Even for a moment, if you accept something as a part of you, you attain a profound sense of harmony. You are attuned to life. If your acceptance is total, you can experience the whole of existence as part of yourself. Can existence really become a part of you? Now that seems logically impossible. It is logically impossible, but that is the truth. As you are part of existence, existence is also a part of you. As a drop is a part of the ocean is also part of the drop. This is because time and space are not absolute, they can be stretched and contracted as well. Yoga has always said you can pack the whole of creation into a mustard seed. Modern physics confirm that time and space are not what we once thought they were. So once you transcend the limitations of your logic, you also transcend the limitations of time and space. If you become absolute acceptance, then everything past, present and future is here and now. Is this some kind of magic? No, this is reality, the most spectacular magic of creation. Accepting this moment is not a formula or a concept, it is the very basis of creation. It is in this lap of this creation that creation is happening. All you need to do is to accept this moment in its entirety. An uninhibited, an uninhibited response to it with all that you are in thought, emotion, and very life that you are delivers you to a blessed reality, the very source of creation. Once you have come to this planet as a human being, if you do not experience your universality, the incredible possibility implicit in this moment, your human form has gone to waste. To merely eat, sleep, reproduce and die, you do not need the sophisticated body, mind and awareness you have been gifted with. If this tremendous gift is not explored, it is a terrible shame. Next point is the complexity of conditioning. What prevents human beings from discovering the profoundly transformative potential of the present moment? The answer is simple: a vagrant mind. The human mind is an infinitely complex mechanism. If you seek to liberate yourself from karma, it is important to have some understanding of how this elaborate mechanism functions. This highly intricate machinery is necessary for our physical survival. It can, however, often become a barrier for our longing for freedom. As we have seen, you may endlessly discuss freedom, but there is no such thing as freedom when the very way you think, feel and perceive life is conditioned by your past experience. From the day you were born, your parents, your family, your culture, your religion, your education, your social context have worked upon you, determining who you are right now. So your mind is very deeply conditioned by your past. This conditioning is what we call karma. Your entire volume of past action performed knowingly or unknowingly has shaped who you are today. This has such a whiz-like grips on you that there is no question of free will. The very way you see the world is determined by your karmic lens. Let us look at the mental mechanism that creates your karma. Gautama the Buddha, a great scientist of human mind, speaks of four aspects of mind: Vinaya, that means cognition; Sanaya, that means recognition; Vedana, that means sensation; and Sankara, that is reaction. That means cognition, recognition, sensation and reaction. Vinaya, Sanaya, Vedana and Sankara. Now let's suppose a sound comes to your ears. It enters the first aspect of your mind. Vinaya cognizes that this is a sound, not a smell, taste or sight. Sanaya recognizes the sound, that this is a person speaking, a bird chirping, an automobile engine starting up and so on. How does it recognize it? Every sound you have ever heard has been recorded, so a vast library of sounds exists within you. Without a past impression, there is no possibility of recognition. If, for instance, you hear the sound of a woodpecker for the first very time, for the very first time, your mind will be confused. But 10 days later, if you hear it again, Sanya will recognize it immediately. If there are some young people next door playing heavy metal music, you may go into ecstasy, but your grandfather may have a nervous breakdown. The same sound creates a pleasant sensation in one person and drives the others crazy. Now, if you recognize the sound, Vedana swings into action and produces a sensation. If you recognize this as music, pleasant sensation will happen. If you recognize this as a noise, unpleasant sensation will happen. It is not the sound itself, but the way it is imprinted on you that makes you recognize it as pleasant or unpleasant. So, the very way in which you experience life, whether you see it as a sweet or sour, beautiful or ugly, unpleasant, pleasant or unpleasant, is your responsibility. As your ability to respond is what determines the nature of your experience. You are sensory being. Your entire experience of life is certain sensation. If you do not feel a certain sensation, you are not even aware that that part of your body exists. When your leg goes numb for a few moments, you are not even sure if it exists. It is Vedana that reminds you that you exist by giving you the experience of sensation. The way you recognize the sensory input is the way you experience life. Vinaya, Sanya and Vedana, cognition, recognition and sensation are automatic and take place in a split second. However, the fourth part of the mind is related to reaction and is entirely in your conscious control. If a pleasant sensation arises and you say you love it, your sankhara immediately says, oh, he loves it. Store it in the love bag. Now it is stored in your love bag forever. If an unpleasant sensation arises and you strongly feel, I hate it, Sankara immediately says he hates it, store it in the hate bag. It is then stored in the hate bag forever. If you find yourself oscillating between craving and aversion, love and hate, your karma is growing at a rapid pace. Your bondage is intensifying. If you have strong likes and dislikes, your suffering is also more intense. But another scenario is also possible. If a scenario arises, you have a choice whether to react. Once you are able to exercise this choice, you simply experience the sensation for what it is. If you generate a strong reaction, you will distort the experience. But if you remain equanimous, the karma attached to that type of sensation begins to crumble within you. With equanimity, your entire structure of karma begins to collapse. All it takes is a willingness to experience everything the way it is. You are not avoiding experience or pursuing it. You are simply open to enjoying the different flavors of life without seeking one and escaping the other. Isn't that the whole point of your sojourn on this planet, to experience as much of life as possible before you fall dead? So begin with this profound realization: this moment is inevitable. Put differently, one might say, allow this simple truth to percolate into you. My ability to respond is boundless. If you are aware of this truth, you will see that so much that seems to be restricting you right now will vanish in just 24 hours. Being in awareness for just 3 minutes will enable you to see an immediate difference. Once you are able to steadily maintain this awareness, you will find a time comes when there is no difference between you and a Buddha. As your acceptance deepens, you also move into higher and higher level of freedom. Acceptance is freedom from the blame game, freedom from drama of othering, freedom from dance of duality. There is only you in this moment and no one else. Who then can you possibly blame? But when you keep resisting, you are creating deeper levels of bondage. Seeing that your ability to respond is limitless is profoundly important, because this ability goes way beyond our present level of understanding and perception. Now, the moment people hear that they have the ability to respond even to events that happened before they were born, they are given to dismissing this as nonsense. I am responsible for things that happened before my birth. This is outrageous. This is crossing the limits of logic. But let's look at in another way. Suppose my grandfather had given $25 million to your grandfather as a loan. Today I read my grandfather's old diary and see that he has clearly made note of this transaction on a particular day. My grandfather passed away 3 days after this loan was made, and so the money was never repaid. I have proof of the transaction. So I come to you and say, my grandfather lent you, grandfather, this sum of money before we or our fathers were born. I have proof. Since we are friends, I will waive the interest, but please return the principal amount. What would you say to that? Obviously, you would say, sheer nonsense. Why am I responsible for something that happened before I was born? Go ask my grandfather for it. But let us say the tables are reversed. I am enjoying my property, but you found some old papers this morning that clearly say that this property belonged to your grandfather. What would you do? How would you act? You would immediately have contacted your lawyer, wouldn't you? If your grandfather made wealth or owned property before you were born, you would definitely take responsibility for it. But if he had taken a loan, of course you are not responsible. This is an ancient social game. Heads I win, tails you lose. The fact is your responsibility, whether you like it or not, know it or not, goes way beyond your present levels of understanding. If you accept this fact, your life naturally comes to a certain ease and harmony. The more you start seeing that you are responsible for your life, the closer you move toward your liberation. If you try to pass the buck to somebody, you will start moving towards your entanglement. If you try to pass the buck to somebody, you will start moving towards your entanglement. Let us say you were walking on a street and some passerby stepped on your foot and broke it. You are in a great pain and you hold the passerby responsible. When you hold someone responsible for your pain, you tend to wish the same to them. On the other hand, if you were able to think what happened is unfortunate, but if my leg is broken, it is my karma, you would take responsible action rather than fritter away time and energy compelling, cursing your fate or planning your vendetta, which is more intelligent way to exist. Don't make the mistake of thinking karma is fatalism. Acknowledging karma means that you see that your life is 100% your doing. If you see this, you will create your life the way you want it, rather than sitting around feeling helpless, cursing your parents, genes or your current circumstances. Seeing your life as self-created rather than as an accidental phenomenon. This is the basis of karma. This is an empowered life that will naturally move toward liberation. Let's talk about important sadhana related to this. Most human beings do not realize the tremendous power of creativity they have been endowed with. This is because most of their creations are determined by their compulsiveness, not by their freedom. Anything created by limitations will be limited. But if you see your ability to respond as limitless, the power to create is super enhanced. Here is something you can try for yourself. If you drop your self image completely, you will find yourself in a state of great freedom. You now have the power to live with a self image at all. You also have the power to transform your image altogether. Basically, you can pick up an image and drop it at will. Either way, nothing will stick to you. I will not tell you how you should be, but stop now and create yourself anew in your mind. Start with the skeletal structure, slowly move into the flesh and blood. Close your eyes and visualize how you would like other people to experience you. How would you like the fundamental nature of your thought and emotion to be? What kind of impact would you like to have on the world? Create a whole new being. Then see if this new image is any closer to your notion of the divine than the old. Is it really better than that the earlier image? Examine it in great detail. Is this new image more capable, more human, more loving, more blissful? Visualize this image as powerfully as you can. Make it come alive within you. If you thought is powerful enough, if your visualization is powerful enough, it can even break through the bonds of karma. Here is an opportunity to transcend all your limitations of thought, emotion, and action. Here is an opportunity to consciously craft yourself to become the creation you want to be. Next point is creating distance from the karmic structure. The primary aim of meditation is to create a certain distance between you and your physical, mental, and energy bodies. Your mental body is a major manufacturing unit of karma. If you see that your mind is the principal source of karma, you are on the right path. Once there is a distance between you and the mind, there is a distance from the past. Now all those memories are available when you need them, but they no longer have the power to rule. The aim is one day to create a situation within you in which you have the living experience. I am not the accumulation of my mind. Now your karma has no power over you. This is the first step towards freedom. This is a growing trend of attempting past life regressions in the hope of looking into one's karmic structure. This is absolutely unnecessary if one is on a spiritual path. Sifting through the content of your mind is an endless and pointless exercise. The spiritual seeker does not want to drop karma selectively. The aim is to drop the package entirely. Once there is a clear space between you and your mind, your karma empties very rapidly. You have now stopped creating new stock, which helps enormously. The old stock will flow out very quickly with the passage of time. You are now able to see my mind belongs to me, but I am not my mind. It is like driving a car. The engine responds to everything you intended it to be, but it is not you. When you get deeply involved with your car, you may see it as an extension of yourself. Many people do. But when you are able to distance yourself from your mind, your capacity to make it do what you want to do increases. Once you can separate yourself this way, you do not have to worry about karma ever again. The basis of karma is simple. You are the source of all your baggage. When you clearly perceive this, your essential quality changes. If you see someone else as the source, you will always be distracted, disoriented, bitter, frustrated, agitated, and angry. When you see yourself as the source, you are centered. Your energies are now focused within you. You are no longer enacting rituals of blame and rage in your head. You are no longer enslaved to your external environment or to your mind. Once you understand karma as your responsibility, you are free. Once you distance yourself from your mind, you are also free. Both approaches work. Next point is reclaiming responsibility. It happened on a certain day. Sankaran Pillai went to the bar. He settled down at the bar counter. See, I need a drink, but I do not have any money on me right now, he told the bartender. Please leave, said the bartender immediately. We do not entertain such people here. Sankaran Pillai was unfazed. Wait a moment, I can show you something. If you are impressed by it, you give me a free drink. If you aren't, I promise to go away without a word. The Sankaran Pillai proceeded to pull out a toad from his pocket. He placed it on the counter. The bartender asked, bored, are you going to tell me that if I kiss it, it will turn into a princess? No, Sankaran Pillai assures him, just wait. And he pulled out a hamster from another pocket. This hamster, he announced, can recite chapter from the Bible for you. Ha, the bartender scoffed. Do not bullshit me, man. Just listen, Sankaran Pillai said, and the hamster promptly recited Galatians 5. Hey, this is incredible, the bartender exclaimed and fixed Sankaran Pillai a drink. Sankaran Pillai accepted the drink and put the hamster back in his pocket. I have never done with one drink, he said. I can make this toad recite the Bible too. Ask for any chapter. How about Genesis 3? Asked the impressed bartender. The toad promptly reeled it off. The bartender was amazed. He offered Sankaran Pillai yet another drink. Sankaran Pillai downed it and announced, and now this toad is for sale. Everyone in the bar immediately started bidding. The bidding was fast and furious. The toad was finally sold for $200. As Sankaran Pillai was about to give the toad to the highest bidder, the bartender held him by collar and pulled him across the counter. "You idiot," he hissed. You are giving away a talking toad for $200. I can get you 2 million if you are willing to split. If you are willing to split. Sankaran Pillai said calmly, No, it does not matter. What they are paying is enough. He collected his $200 and handed over the toad. The excited man who bought it ran out of the bar to show off his new acquisition. The bartender told Sankaran Pillai, "You are a nutcase, a talking toad for just $200. Sankaran Pillai said, "Don't worry, it is just that my hamster is ventriloquist. This absurd state of affair is actually the way many people lead their lives. They choose to outsource the responsibility all the time to their equivalent of the hamster. Most of the time, people pass the buck to their old karma. The tragedy is that in the process, they miss the enormous potential of this moment. The barter away of transformative power of the present by ensuring the future is a repetition of the past. Your old karma is not the problem. The problem is that your present karma is looking for an escape route. It wants to blame someone else. It wants to go to the past or the future and escape the present. And so the same old cycle of victimhood and passivity perpetuates itself. Stop and see. You might well find you are doing it right now. Yes, it is true that your old karma creates certain tendencies that influence you. However, every human being has awareness enough to overcome these tendencies. Not a single person needs to be enslaved by their hereditary blueprint. Each of us has a choice, the choice to transcend our karmic inheritance or to be tyrannized by it. How many times do you overhear people say something along the lines of the ventriloquist hamster? I really want to control my temper, but you know how it is, my father's genes. Or I wish I could start cleaning up my street, but I live in such a apathetic neighborhood. With every statement of this kind, you are not merely making sweeping verdicts about your past, you are writing off your future before you live it. Irrespective of past karma, if you handle your present moment right, things can change fundamentally. This is the beauty of being human. It does not matter what kind of baggage you are carrying. If you are willing to be absolutely conscious, the past has no impact upon you. I have seen this in countless numbers of people. With just a little better understanding of the mechanics of their mind, even without any serious sadhana, they find themselves more joyful than ever before. Without knowing why, they find themselves walking with a new spring in their step, singing in the shower or whistling during the day. In the inner engineering program I conduct, even before we initiate people into an energy action called a kriya, just hearing about the workings of the mind frees them in many ways. What you called karma, the bags of tendencies and predispositions you carry with you, is only in your memory and imagination. So if you inhabit this moment deeply, fully, completely, you have dropped your karmic load. It is time to let go of the past, live consciously, and you will see that this moment cannot be fragmented into past and future, into now and then. All that ever was in this creation is only in this moment, and all that will ever be is only in this moment. The present is your only address, the here and now is your only abode. So this is all about chapter 8 of the book Karma. I hope you love this chapter, you enjoy this chapter and gain some perspective, some knowledge out of it. Be meditative, be conscious, keep learning, keep growing. Namaskaram. Thank you.